What's up my friends, welcome back to the channel. Today I have 10 bar hacks for you that will help you to make better cocktails and or save you money. Some are fairly new, some are older, some have been advertised widely and some are more obscure, but I believe you should have them all in your arsenal. So without further ado, if you are ready, let's dive right in. Let's go. Alright, so tip number 1 on the list today, the Loomies, also known as the Persian black limes or sometimes just black limes. Those are very popular in the Middle East culinary culture and most of the time they're used as spices, but they're also extremely fragrant, so when grated on top of your cocktail they make a great addition. The reason this is a bar hack is because they can be made out of limes that spend too much time in your fridge. You know, when your limes start to look like a troll that got jaundice, it's time not to throw them away but to turn them into black limes, and when they're stored into cool and dry environment they just last forever. So it's a great tip to avoid wasting your limes, save a little bit of money and make better cocktails at the same time. So how you make them is fairly simple. It takes a little bit of time but the process is really straightforward. You start by blanching your limes for 90 seconds in salted water, then you throw them in a ice water bath until they cool down completely, and next all you have to do left is to place them in your dehydrator if you have one, or if you don't, to place them in your oven set at 80 degrees Celsius without the fan and leave them there until they are black, hard and very light in weight. This is your cue to know the limes are ready, because depending on the size of your lime this can vary quite a lot, so I can't give you a precise duration. Now one of my favorite ways to use them is simply to grate some on top of my cocktails. The aroma is just wonderful. If you want to know a little bit more about the black limes, how to make them and also different ways to use them, I've already covered that before in the channel, so I'm going to link the video in the upper corner. Alright, so before we do anything else today, my friends, I need to drink my Z-Biotics. You know, my life is not always easy. I make cocktail videos for a living and sometimes I even get to drink them. But I also have to wake up the next morning and get back to work. These videos are not going to edit themselves, you know. And that's when Z-Biotics comes in. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut, and it's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for how you feel the next day. And Z-Biotics pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. So if you make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night and drink responsibly, you'll feel your best tomorrow. Like me. I've been using Z-Biotics for a couple of years now and I keep on coming back to it, but you don't have to take my words for it because they offer a 100% money back guarantee. So if you want to give it a try, click the link in the description to get 15% off your first order at checkout. So thank you very much Z-Biotics for sponsoring this episode, but now let's go back to our program. Alright, so tip number 2 on the list, the citrus aroma. This one was created by yours truly and Darcy O'Neill from the Art of Drinks channel. We first made it with a goal in mind to reduce the waste of citruses in both restaurants and home bars, because we all been there. We buy some oranges to garnish our cocktails and then we forget about these zested oranges in our fridge and they eventually go to waste. At home it's not a huge problem, but in bars and restaurants I've seen some crazy things, like a lot of waste. So this has been something I had in mind for years and Darcy was able to help me developing the formula to create something that's equally as fragrant than the real citrus zest. So we created this at first to replace oranges and lemon zest, but you can use the same method to make a cocktail perfume with any essential oil that's generally recognized as safe. To make it, you're gonna need 3 things: essential oil, high-proof spirit, and propylene glycol. The essential oil is your aroma, the high-proof spirit is your solvent to be able to dissolve the essential oil because it's not soluble in water, and the propylene glycol, in simple words, is there to help the formula releasing its aroma on a steady basis instead of releasing all the aroma all at once. Because if you use only these 2 ingredients and spray that on top of your cocktail, it's gonna smell really nice at first, but after a couple of seconds the aroma will be gone. So the propylene glycol is there to help with that. There's 2 important things to remember when it's going to be the time to buy the ingredients. The essential oil needs to be first generally recognized as safe. So this is a list of safe ingredients that can have their oil extracted for human consumption, and it needs to be made in a facility that recognized as food grade, and usually it's written on the box it is meant for oral purposes. Then for the propylene glycol, you need to look on the label for the mention USP, which is the mention food grade made for this type of product. Now for the formula, you're gonna go by volume with 1 part of essential oil, 2 parts of propylene glycol, and 4 parts of high-proof spirit. You're gonna stir or shake until properly incorporated. It's gonna be cloudy at first, but it's gonna clear up really nicely after about 24 hours. And the fact we use high-proof spirit is gonna make the solution stable, so you're not gonna have to shake it every time you wanna use it. Speaking of using it, you're gonna need an atomizer, and you simply spray 1 or 2 spritz on top of your cocktail. That's all you need. Now, speaking of atomizer, let's move on to number 3. With the absinthe atomizer. This one is not new, I know, but I still see a lot of people rinsing their glass with absinthe for their Sazeracs or their Corp Survivor number 2. And while this is the classic way to do it, I don't believe it does a good job. On the other hand, the absinthe atomizer will really help you to coat the inside of your glass evenly for a beautiful aroma, and you're not gonna waste a single drop. So if you are serious about cocktails, I highly recommend you start using an atomizer for your absinthe rinse. Tip number 4 now, the 30-second orgia. This hack was created by Derek from Make and Drink, or at least if he didn't create it, which I think he did, his channel is where I saw it first. Not only this hack will save you a lot of time, it also allows you to control easily the intensity of nut flavor you want in your orgia. So I think it is genius. The secret for this is to use pure almond paste. This will allow you to skip the making your own milk part, which can be really time consuming. And by adding simply paste to your water, you can really control the intensity of flavor you want in your orgia. So if you want a lighter or a bolder flavor of nut in your syrup, you can easily just add a little bit more or a little bit less, and that's all you need to worry about. I also done that with sesame paste before. It was fantastic for a sesame orgia. So basically, you can use this method for whatever kind of orgia you want if you can find a pure paste of the nut. So you just need to make sure the paste is 100% pure, so no salt, no additives, or no sugar, and you're gonna be good to use that for this recipe. All you need to do is really super straightforward. In a blender, you add 100 grams of water, 120 grams of sugar, 20 grams of your paste, and a couple of dashes of orange blossom water. Then you simply blend at high speed until the sugar is completely dissolved, bottle it, and this is how you make your 30 seconds orgia. So thank you so much, Derek, for this wonderful hack. It's literally a game changer. And guys at home, if you want to know more about this, I'm gonna link his video in the description as well. So now let's talk about hack number 5, how to make better frozen cocktails. This one's another fairly new hack, and it was introduced to us by Garrett Richard, who wrote the book Tropical Standard. It's a tiki-oriented cocktail book with a lot of advanced techniques. So if you are into that kind of stuff, I highly recommend it. I'm gonna link it you know where. His hack to make better frozen cocktails is simply to add a little bit of xanthan gum. It's a stabilizer slash emulsifier, and it does a great job at preventing your cocktail from separating too fast, which is often the case, and it's super annoying with frozen cocktails. So all you have to do is to add per serving of frozen cocktail a 1/4 teaspoon or 0.5 grams of xanthan gum. I do it cowboy style and mix everything all at once, but xanthan gum is very sticky, so it can stick to the walls of your blender or make some lumps. So in order to avoid that, it's recommended you blend it with the liquid alone for a couple of seconds at the lowest setting as possible. Then you add the ice and blend it again. This will be the technique to get the best results. But if, like me, your blender doesn't really allow you to do this in an efficient way because you need to flip it before blending, just do as I do and it's still going to be better than without the xanthan gum. And speaking of gum, let's talk about how to get better texture in your cocktails with gum Campari. This is an idea I had kind of as an answer to the sushi rice Negroni trend. I was not a huge fan of the hack back then and still not today, but I sure understand our will and obsession to get better texture in our drinks. So I tried to add a little bit of gum arabic to my Campari, and the result was satisfying. So I shared the hack here on YouTube, on Instagram as well, and the reel went semi-viral, which made me realize that I didn't invent the hack, because according to the comments, a lot of people were already doing this, which is completely fine. I actually saw it as a good news. That just meant that the hack was working. So in order to do this, all you need is in a jar to add 40 grams of gum arabic powder and 80 grams of Campari. Stir the mix and leave that resting at room temperature for about 2 hours. This will leave enough time for the powder to dissolve in the Campari. So now you have a Campari and gum base, which is very thick, and all you have to do left is to add more Campari to reach the desired texture. For me, the sweet spot for this amount is to add an additional 450 grams of Campari. Then you simply mix to combine, bottle up, label it, and there you have it, your gum Campari. So obviously you can use this method with other ingredients like Aperol, Amari, vermouths, or liqueurs. I don't really recommend that for spirits alone unless you use way less gum arabic, but feel free to experiment. It's a great hack to enhance the texture of your cocktail you may feel is otherwise a little bit thin. So now let's move on with another hack that's really cool. Let's talk about zero acidity clarification. This genius hack was discovered by Daniel Villa. He found that powdered milk, because it has already been broken down, doesn't need acidity to curdle, making it possible to use for fat washing cocktails without any acidity. And if that wasn't already cool enough, there's one more feature to this method that I believe is even cooler. You can cook the milk powder before rehydrating it to develop some really cool flavors. It's gonna taste a little bit like dulce de leche with cow milk powder, and obviously toasted coconut with coconut milk powder. No matter what route you want to take, if you want to cook it or not, all you have to do after is to rehydrate the milk following the brand's recipe and use that as if it was regular milk for your milk washing. I usually go with about 30 ml of milk for 100 ml of cocktail for the best result. And obviously the toasting the milk method is also great in a regular milk punch if you want to develop some toasted flavors you wouldn't be able to get otherwise. So thank you very much, Danielle, for this wonderful hack. Now let's talk about number 8, which is more like a tool recommendation than a tip, but I love it. I recently discovered that it has one specific use that makes it essential for a mixology technique, and I'm talking about the magnetic stirrer. I bought my first one about 5 years ago for an episode here on the channel about how to make a cordial. I wanted to shoot a little skit that looked like I was in the lab, kind of with a Breaking Bad atmosphere, but that was purely for fun. But then since I had the device, I started to use it to help me dissolving the sugar in my syrups when I was too lazy to stir them. But really, that's all I was doing with my magnetic stirrer. But recently, I made a pretty thorough experiment on how to improve the fat washing technique, and I realized that the magnetic stirrer was essential to make the most out of our fat washes. So if you want to know everything about this, I'm going to link the video obviously in the description below. But basically what it does is it allows you to keep a larger surface contact between the fat and the spirit throughout the duration of the infusion. So you have a bolder flavor with lesser fat. So my recommendation is whenever you make a fat wash, you leave it running for about 2 hours. That way you can reduce the amount of fat by up to 25% compared to when you don't use the magnetic stirrer, and still achieving the same level of flavor. So you can end up saving quite a lot. So now let's move on to hack number 9, the flash infusion. This technique was made popular by David Arnold, the man behind the masterpiece of a book, Liquid Intelligence. The technique consists in combining liquid and solids in a siphon or an ISI cream whipper and charging it with nitrous oxide. The gas will force the liquid into the solid cell structure, and when the pressure is released, the liquid rapidly extract the flavors. So an infusion that usually requires a couple of weeks of maceration can be done in a couple of hours, and one that usually needs a couple of hours can be done in just a few minutes. The quantity of ingredients will change obviously depending on your recipe, but basically all you have to do is to add your solids, pour your liquid in your cream whipper, close it, charge it with one end to a cartridge, shake it vigorously for a couple of seconds, charge it another time, and leave it resting for the time the recipe calls for. Now the final part is super important here. What you need to do for better extraction is to release the gas all at once, and sometimes depending on the level of liquid in your canister, it can make a mess. So this is my little pro tip for you. You're gonna place your shaken tin in front of the spout. You're gonna take the second one and you're gonna place it on top of the spout. That way, when you're gonna release the gas, if some liquid wants to go out, it's just gonna hit the bottom of the upper tin and fall right in the bottom one without making any mess. Then once the gas is fully released, you open up the canister, and if you listen carefully, you're gonna hear something that sounds a little bit like Rice Krispies in milk That's the pressure being released and the liquid going out from the solids. So during that time, don't filter out your liquid. You need to wait until you hear no more sound before filtering it. That's the best way to get the best extraction and best yield as possible. So then when there's no more Rice Krispie sound, you can filter out your mixture using a fine mesh strainer, coffee filter, cheesecloth, or nut milk bag, the filtering device that you want. And this is as simple as that, how we make a flash infusion. So now, last but not least, and one of my favorite of them all, how to use tinctures to make flavored syrups, save a ton of fridge space and potentially avoid a lot of waste. For both professional and home bartenders, I believe shelf life of ingredients is crucial because we always want to keep a wide variety of flavor possibilities, but we don't want our ingredients to go to waste because the volume of cocktails we're making is not large enough. So I think tinctures are one of the best, if not the best way to reduce waste when it comes to syrups. Tinctures are easy to make and shelf stable, so you can make and keep as many as you want at room temperature, like your bitters, and whenever you want to use a flavored syrup in a cocktail, you simply grab your bottle of simple syrup, add a couple of dashes of your tinctures, and there you have it. It's like if you would have used a flavored syrup. This always works best with dry ingredients, maybe with the exception of citrus peels, and the smaller the pieces of your aromats, the best extraction of flavor you're gonna get. I also have a rule of thumb when it comes to solvent to aromat ratio, and it's 10:1. So 10 parts solvent for 1 part aromat. So let's say we want to make a cinnamon tincture. We're gonna need, for 10 grams of cinnamon, we're gonna need 100 ml of alcohol. You simply add both ingredients in a seal-tight container and leave that resting at room temperature for 2 weeks, shaking it briefly, occasionally. After 2 weeks, the tincture is ready. All you need to do is to fine strain it. And I like to bottle mine in a pipette bottle. So that way, when I want to use it, I can measure with precision the amount I want. Now, if you remember hack number 9, the flash infusion, you can totally make your tinctures using this technique. And instead of waiting 2 weeks for the tincture to be ready, you can make it in only 2 hours. It is really awesome if you ask me. So my friends, this is it for me today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked this video. Leave a thumbs up if you did. Don't forget to subscribe before you go, to turn the bell if you want to make sure not to miss the next one. And until then, thank you very much again. Have a great day and see you very soon.